It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 318 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lom, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my comrade in gaming commentary, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, what's new with you, man? We didn't record last week.
It's true, we didn't record last week. My last couple of weeks have been fun. It's really weird because after years of, not really having people over, I haven't felt like, the last couple of months, people have been around like clockwork. So I've had weekends of friends over, and last week it was family over, and it's a good change. It's the type of thing that I kind of miss from back, times back before we both moved away. Some good camaraderie going on is what I'm saying. But yeah, apart from that, not really anything interesting. Some games, some movies. We're going to talk about that later. But Mr. Nice Guy, cool trip, fun times?
Yeah, so I spent last week, at least a couple days of last week in the DC area, and it was purely for work. Didn't really have a ton of downtime.
Dang.
But did get to experience DC, and I had never been there before. I was in the Arlington area, so didn't get to see the White House or anything like that. But did get out for lunch, went for a walk, saw the sights that were within the distance of my hotel room and the best sandwich shop in America, which is actually the name of the place I ate lunch. It's a place in Arlington called the Best Sandwich Shop. And it was packed. And what I will say is the vibe of that area is very similar to the vibe that you see when you watch political shows and people are out for lunch and they're in suits and there's a bunch of young go-getters and they're eating their sandwich and talking about business, cutting deals and negotiating, maybe even a little blackmail mixed in. I didn't eavesdrop, so I don't know.
Ooh.
But I definitely was feeling the vibe in Arlington, and that sandwich shop, very reasonably priced and very quality stuff. So if you're ever there, check out the Best Sandwich Shop. They didn't pay me to say that, but it was good. Mac, I got to tell you this, though. The highlight of last week was I got home, and the past couple weeks, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis thing or not, but I've been getting into laser tag. And I'm not talking about laser tag where you're using fake plasticky guns.
Oh, so instead we're using real laser guns.
We're using realistic laser guns. Yeah.
So it's more of a simulated paintball vibe then.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And this particular place that I've been going with my sons is headshots only.
Headshots only.
Yes, you're wearing a thing on your head, and you have a gun that actually looks like a real AK-74U or a real XM4 or a real pistol. And you go, and they have a whole setup, and they have different games, and they have defuse the bomb, and they have, carry the person to your side. They have domination like Call of Duty. They had a Friday the 13th game the week that we went this past week. And I actually have to show you the TikTok because they recorded us and our highlights made the TikTok for this particular thing. Yeah, so I'll have to send that to you.
I'm not surprised. You are, at almost everything you do, Mr. Nice Guy, you are noteworthy, and usually for the reasons you want to be noteworthy.
Yeah, I try to be. But I brought a neighbor and his son, and we had a good time. And, Mac, the reason I mention all this is because paintball isn't just for kids. It's for dudes like us. Who are just trying to have fun, do some exercise, and play a more tactical version of what was previously a childlike game. So this year, Midwest Gaming Classic, Mac comes out. We're also laser tagging, my friend.
I am on board. I still have a chest-mounted GoPro that I'll 100% put on. Hopefully my arms won't get in the way. We'll see if we've got usable footage.
Get some footage. And on that note, Mac, I say we do what we do best, man. and hop right up in that gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, Mr. Nice Guy. What is new in video gaming, sir?
So much. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is episode 318 of Two Nerds in a Pod. Thank you so much for tuning in. Nerdiest podcast in the galaxy. Mac, we often talk about games going away, disappearing, because they're not downloadable, because they're not being preserved for whatever reason. Now, we have a different instance today, and this is on SteamDeckHQ.com. Let's read what Noah Kopetsky writes. He writes, "While I don't believe there was ever explicit support that was given, this is still a sad piece for me to write. Earlier today, Rockstar pushed out a new update for Grand Theft Auto 5, which added in Battle Eye anti-cheat to GTA Online. While this is a nice surprise, since cheaters in the game have been crazy for years, it also rendered the game unplayable on the Steam Deck. Battle Eye is a proprietary anti-cheat software similar to other tools like Easy Anti-Cheat. It's been around since 2004 and has been used in many games like DayZ, Watch Dogs Legion, and PUBG. Now GTA Online has been added to that list, but unlike the other games, there's no Steam Deck support here. Battle Eye does actually support the Proton compatibility layer and the Steam Deck, and we have seen some games running on the portable device like Watch Dogs, but GTA Online is not one of them." Mac, the reason I heard about this is because I was browsing Reddit, and people are very, very upset. I mean, imagine being able to play your favorite MMO on the go, on your PC handheld, and then all of a sudden losing it. And you've been putting time in this since, 2016 when the game came out? And now your character is you either got to play on a PC or you got to figure something else out. What are your thoughts on this? Should Rockstar feel any obligation to support the game on this specific device? Because typically when we talk about this, we're talking about a game disappearing completely, rather than them saying, oh, your hardware is no longer going to be able to support the software, rather than the opposite. So what are your thoughts?
Not to directly grapple with the subject at hand, but I had heard, because I'm a nerd and I pay attention to these things, I had heard that Microsoft said that they had plans to take kernel-level access away from anti-cheat programs and to move it. And I think this is something that has been somewhat prompted by the Cloudflare issue that we had a couple of months ago where, planes couldn't land and such. That was all as a result of kernel-level access.
Sure.
Anyway, all of that is to say that that those were the rumblings that I had kind of heard. And if Microsoft, who owns Windows, and, that's a large section of the gaming market, pushed anti-cheats away from kernel-level access, then that would be a hoop that would stop preventing Linux or, the Steam Deck in this case from having those, because anti-cheat measures would have to operate in accordance that would work with Windows, would also be much more suited to being able to work on Linux. This is not a new problem.
Yep.
All that being said, I just want to fly spec that maybe there's some light on the horizon, even if nothing happens right now. There may need to be, in order to be compatible with Windows going forward, they may have to revise that, and this may go back to being workable for us. Anyway, sorry. Back to the actual question at hand, though, Mr. Nice Guy. Is that obviously I think it's sad because, we're gamers, we like our art, and the thing that sets video games apart from all other types of art forms is the interactivity and the experience of it.
Agree.
And when we lose that, that's not so great. And the art is best when able to be enjoyed by the most people. So it seems a step backward for me. But I'm glad that it's not going to be completely, gone like in some other cases. So it's like, this is unfortunate. It's sad, but it's on the order of sad, great loss, tragedy, wherever that spectrum is, it kind of leans toward the lower side. But Mr. Nice Guy, this is a game that's probably more in your wheelhouse. How has this impacted you?
Yeah, so I will say, and let me correct what I said earlier, because I said, someone could have been playing this since 2016, and now they may not have access. That's not true, because the Steam Deck wasn't out in 2016, right? So I just want to correct myself on that. This is one of those games that was in my backlog. And let me be clear, I actually put, 40, 50, 60 hours into the single player and completed the single player almost completely on the Steam Deck. So it plays very well on deck. I did put maybe 2, 3, maybe 5 hours into the multiplayer online on Steam Deck, and I enjoyed it. And so in that sense, it's something that I said, that is a game that I absolutely will get back to. I'm having fun with it, but there's so much else on my plate. So in that sense, I'm experiencing post-FOMO. Like, I did miss out on the opportunity to play it on deck. In terms of how I feel for other people, this is not a game that has a small community. This is a game that has a large community. And I would be very, very interested to see how the concurrent player count is impacted by the loss of ability to play this on Steam. Rockstar is all about making money. There has to be some way that they can fix this. And as I've been reading and people have been submitting support tickets to Rockstar, they're basically saying, we're not going to do anything about this. I'm not going to say that this is comparable to a game being taken off and people not being able to play it. But this is... It's just very, very strange to me, Mac. If you own a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox or a Switch, and suddenly there was an update that made the game not playable on one of those consoles, it would be unacceptable. There would be refunds. There would be uproar. There'd be more uproar than there is, because this is a derivative version of a PC. People are kind of saying, "Oh well, sorry." Get a real PC or go sit in front of your PC and play it, your physical PC. And I don't think that's right. I feel bad for these players, but I don't think Rockstar is in the wrong.
I just hope that they're not planning on letting it go anytime soon, because Mr. Nice Guy, I want you to be able to dive into the multiplayer, and I'm sad that you can't do it on the deck anymore.
Yeah.
The answer to the question, what's on deck? Not GTA Online multiplayer.
Not GTA Online multiplayer. It is in the past, at least for Steam Deck players, and hopefully they figure it out. There's still some really vibrant role-playing communities, GTA roleplay, and all kinds of stuff going on. I hope they figure it out for people who want to be able to play on the go, or even just those who want to be able to play it when they are not at home. Right? People who typically play PC but want to be able to take their deck and play. I feel for them. Mac, let's talk about what is probably the biggest news story of the past week. And I know some people in the chat have already asked if we're going to talk about this. So I know there's some excitement. We're going to take directly from the PlayStation blog here. Did Hideki Nishino write this? That's what it says. Here is what it says, Mac. Over the last 4 years, since the launch of PS5, we've worked hard to continuously evolve the console experience and deliver great games to our players that our players expect from us. Today, I'm incredibly proud to announce the next step in that evolution and welcome the PlayStation 5 Pro to the PlayStation family, our most advanced and innovative console hardware to date. They go on to say, we developed the PS5 Pro with deeply engaged players and game creators in mind, as many have asked for a console that runs even higher fidelity graphics with smoother frame rates at 60 frames per second. Mac, here's some of the bullet points of what will come with the PlayStation Pro. Upgraded GPU. With the PS5 Pro, we're upgrading to a GPU that has 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory. It also enables 45% faster rendering for gameplay. Advanced ray tracing, I think we know what that means. And then AI-driven upscaling. We're also introducing PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, an AI-driven upscaling that uses a machine learning-based technology to provide super sharp image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. Mac, I bet you're wondering one thing.
Just one?
Well, I bet you're wondering how much this is going to cost.
Oh,
Probably.
of course, that is. Yes, Mr. Nice Guy, how much is all this amazing 67% more computational units?
Yeah,
AI scaling, whatever
Yeah.
that means. I mean, we'll talk. But, I mean, how much will this... I'm sure it will be a bargain at twice the price.
Well, Mac, before I tell you, I got to tell you what else this comes with. It does come with a DualSense wireless controller.
Ooh.
And it does come with a copy of Astro's Playroom installed in every PS5 Pro.
A $25 value, yours free.
Well, let's be honest. The DualSense costs about $70. The controller does.
You see, I don't know, so you got to fill in those.
Yeah,
those
you're
for
good.
me.
You're good. It's also going to come with a 2 terabyte SSD, which in the past it's come with 1 terabyte, and then you could upgrade on your own. So you're getting some more space than the old one. And Mac, this is going to cost, for context, the PS5 at launch cost $499 for the disc version, and I believe $399 for the discless. This one is going to be discless. And it's going to cost $699 US. It will be available September 26th for pre-order. Mid-generation refresh. I know you're not as big a PS guy as I am, but $700 in this economy. I don't know if that relates to the economy at all, but what do you think, man? Some upgrades in speed and SSD for $200 more than the original PS5.
Well, I'll tell you what, I understand certain things like, 60 or so % more graphics power, double the storage capacity. Those things make sense to me. Throwing in a DualSense controller, I assume that the original PS5 did not ship with any controllers. You had to buy them.
It actually did. No, it shipped with, depending on the package you bought, it shipped with at least one.
Okay. But it certainly seems like there are some improvements there. There are some things that I don't more understand how to quantify. I don't necessarily understand how a large language model AI processing thingamajig actually does you that much good in a gaming context. I don't know why you would need an AI processing. Where does that processing happen? Is it locking down your system's resources, or is it resources that are being used, server side? In which case it's just taking up more bandwidth. But then again, I feel like I have more questions, and whenever I see one of the 3 bullet points is we have an AI something, I'm like, so you just needed a third something and you wrote down a buzzword in order to justify whatever, because these things come in threes. Anyway, Mr. Nice Guy, I didn't buy a PS5. I'm probably not going to buy a PS5 Pro, but I don't feel like I'm very swayed by the stuff they're putting down. But, please, if I'm wrong, and I'm regularly wrong, what is your take on it?
I don't think you're wrong at all. And it's interesting talking to my other friends. In fact, a good friend of mine who lives not far from here is very, very excited for this. I think that as gamers and just as people with hobbies, there's a point at which we want something new and we want something fresh. And gaming generations have gotten longer and longer and longer because there's less and less need for upgrade. These mid-generation refreshes get some people excited. People who use their PlayStation a few days a week are excited for something that will load things faster, that will allow things to run more smoothly. And candidly, just that little hit of dopamine that you get from spending money on something that you're passionate about. Now, for me, in terms of the value proposition here, my PlayStation 5 works just fine. It hasn't experienced the level of slowdown that I felt like I was seeing with the PS4 mid-generation refresh. And one of the things they're touting with this new one is that it will be able to play some of the old games, the God of Wars, The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, in an enhanced mode. And to me, the idea of going back and playing all those games just doesn't get me excited. I want to know that this new thing is going to make GTA 6, that it's going to make Call of Duty Black Ops 6, that it's going to make games that I do not yet own run better. And if it can do that, then maybe it's worth the money. Mac, I do think this is overpriced, and the only reason that I would consider purchasing it is because this is the first generation where my kids are really, really into gaming, and I could use a second PS5 in the house. So it's literally a matter of this being a first world problem where my kids are using the PS5.
So real quick, Mr. Nice Guy, and I think this is important for us to have on the record in a public place where your children can reference this in the future. In this future where you get a PS5 Pro to supplement your gaming arsenal, which one do the kids get access to?
They get access to the old one, and that's the one they're using now. Absolutely.
All right, we are on record. You're on notice, kids.
And Galvatron has said something. I haven't listened to other commentary on this, but I'm sure everyone is saying this. He writes in the chat, selling the drive and stand a la carte is a clear sign of nickel and dime disrespect. The BD drive is selling out everywhere and is already being scalped online. And that's something that my buddy told me. As soon as this was announced, he went online to Amazon and he purchased the standalone disk drive because this doesn't come with one. And obviously, supply and demand, so did many other people. And so now those are sold out and people are scalping the $80 drive for $120. I feel like Sony really dropped the ball here. How could you give us options for a disc one or a discless one at launch, but then with the mid-gen refresh only give us the discless one? It's just silliness like that. Not selling a stand with it. I don't want to say they should be ashamed of themselves, but I do think that they are making a mistake here. And Mac, we could talk about this all day, but that's been our news for the week.
All right. Well, now that we've taken a look at things around us right now, let's take a little look into the past with some video game history. Now, Mr. Nice Guy, this last week in years before, we had some great releases, but some particular stuff I want to talk about. A delightful one in 2001 for the GameCube, Luigi's Mansion. Not the first time we had Luigi as a playable character, but definitely the first. I feel like it's really the first time that he got a real solid experience of his own. Salute to Luigi on that. Also for the GameCube, the following year, Animal Crossing. We really enjoy. Animal Crossing crawled so that Stardew Valley could fly. 2004 for the Xbox, Fable, a game that didn't quite live up to all the promises that were made, but was still a solid gaming experience nonetheless. And one that I particularly enjoyed and will enjoy for many years to come. But, Mr. Nice Guy, definitely, absolutely, without question, the biggest and most important bit of history happened September 13th, 2005.
What's that?
It's a little thing called the Corrupted Blood incident. Have you heard of it before?
I have not, but I'm very excited. Tell me more.
All right. 2005, World of Warcraft has its roughly 4 million players. And the Corrupted Blood incident was a virtual epidemic that became a virtual pandemic and was actually something studied by medical schools, virologists, and such, just because of how well it seemed to track this, a virtual thing with how pandemics would be happening in the real world. So it all started with the World of Warcraft patch 1.7, which had the however you say it, the raid, right? It had this raid, and the end boss was Hakar the Soul Flayer, and he had a Corrupted Blood debuff. And what it would do, mechanically, was that it would drain hit points somewhere in the high 200s or low 300s of hit points every couple of seconds, and within a certain range of the of Hakar the Soul Flayer, the boss there, he would heal himself with that drained HP. So while this would be frustrating to characters of the level 60-ish or so that people were supposed to be to participate in this raid, it would of course outright kill lower level characters as they couldn't really handle that kind of hit point drain. most importantly, and how this all worked, was that if your character, had the debuff on them, and you got close to another character, that debuff would act like an infection and would jump to any nearby character and debuff them as well.
Wow.
So the boss hits Mr. Nice Guy, and then it pops over to me because I'm drawing aggro, and it's 100% transmission. And of course, no real biggie, because your team of 20, 40 players or whatever, over level 60, that are all in the raid together, are probably going to be fine. That debuff eventually clears after a period of time.
Sure.
And so if a character dies and then respawns, they're fine. Or how they programmed it was they were like, hey, by the time you got someplace else, it would have expired. It takes you 10 minutes, 5 minutes to get from the boss room to the exit. So, we just programmed this for 7 minutes. Bosh, it's done. But what happens if you, say, teleport back to home base? Well, the answer is a wild spread of death and destruction in the virtual world of Warcraft because of two particularly unforeseen groups of NPCs wound up being able to spread the disease as well. Group number one, invulnerable NPCs like shopkeepers and such. Teleporting, popping in, infecting the local shopkeep, who can't be killed by any of these things because gamers, obviously, because otherwise they would try it. But now suddenly everybody who comes into the inn, the tavern, or into the shop, bam's getting hit by corrupted blood, and anybody of below a certain level is just being wiped out. But the other one happened to be the sort of pets. They're an NPC, and they could go ahead and be infected, and you could dismiss that ally, that summonable pet. You could dismiss it away, and while it was dismissed, it was essentially in this kind of stasis until it got summoned in, and then bam, everybody nearby gets the corrupted blood debuff. So it essentially wound up being this sort of summonable infected pet bomb.
Interesting.
And through the work of players and community managers, they mostly got it handled until late September, but it still had lingering issues until it was fully patched in version 1.8 in October. But no kidding, you can actually go to journals of health, and they will reference the corrupted blood incident as a case study in virology and in, human-to-human spread, pandemics, how the transition from an epidemic to a pandemic happens. And we owe that little bit of academic ephemera all to World of Warcraft and somebody who said, I got an idea.
Love it. Love it. Well, Mac, is that what we've got this week, or is there more awesomeness in gaming history this week?
Always more awesomeness, but can it compete with corrupted blood? I say it cannot, because that's what I had for gaming history.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our next segment. The Indie Game of the Week. I like that sound effect. A segment where we talk about a game that may deserve more attention and tell you if it deserves your attention. Mac, this week we've got a doozy. This game is called... I'm going to post the link in the chat for those who are here live. Just a moment. In case we do recommend this game and they want to Steam wishlist it. This week's game is called Kitsune Tales, and here is the description. Run, jump, and dash across a land inspired by Japanese mythology and untangle the love triangle between three young women on a journey of self-discovery. Explore the complicated relationships between kitsune and humans through classic platforming action. This game was released August 1st, 2024. Developer is Kitsune Games. Publisher, Kitsune Games and Midboss LLC. Currently sitting at 601 reviews on Steam. Overwhelmingly positive so far. And what else do I usually share? Price, Mac, is currently $16.99 on sale. but usually $19.99. Categories for this: precision platformer, LGBTQ+, difficult, and fantasy. Those are the tags that are related to this game. As a reminder, we do get these codes for free for our review, but it will not affect our opinions. Mac, what did you think about the game?
I feel sad to say that I was not very compelled by this title, and I wanted to be. On paper, right, it has sort of everything that you would think Mac would love. Side-scrolling, platforming, it's all there. There were some interesting gimmicks. Now, generally, it had a vibe very similar to Super Mario Bros. 3, right? Even down to the usage of power-ups. You could select either between stages, or you could select as an option to be able to use them in the middle of the stage. And that certainly was a nice thing. Certain gimmicks that were definitely kind of cool. I remember the first level that I ran into, a haunted house sort of level with ghosts. The lantern light would keep them at bay and make them non-corporeal so that they wouldn't harm you. And being able to pick up the lantern and move around with it was actually really cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this was not a type of thing that was done in Mario 3, or even, I don't recall that. It seemed like such a simple twist that I think was really, really cool. And I have to give credit where credit is due. There are some great mechanical choices in there. But I felt like I didn't particularly enjoy the controls behind the game, but I just felt like they weren't responsive enough.
Yes. Preach.
And even though there were some great ideas and I really wanted to love it, there was one other thing that also kind of bothered me a bit, and that was that it kind of went to these cutscenes at the beginning and end of every level. And I get that it was trying to tell a story, but I really felt like I was pulled out of the game to watch a cutscene and then play another level and then cutscene time. And I just didn't feel like it struck a balance of storytelling to gameplay or telling the story through the gameplay that appealed to me. I felt like it relied way too heavily on going to cutscenes to give us information rather than having us experience or find it as we went in the world. That's kind of generally how I felt about it. How about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
I think that you summarized a lot of what I would say. And I would agree. I almost feel like the Mario 3 influence was a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they went so far as to have the boot that you could jump in.
I did love stomping with that boot. Like I said, there were a lot of really good design choices, and some things that I'm just like, I can't believe this wasn't in Mario 3. It feels like it would have fit so well.
I guess, first off, let me talk about, we're going to talk about criticisms first.
Sure.
It wasn't too derivative of Mario 3. Don't get us wrong. I also think there was some Mario World influence in there. Like you said, the ability to, pick up these things and move them. There were some blocks that you could hit at different points. They also had some Kaizo challenges, which are effectively extremely difficult platforming levels, which I think is great. Upscaling the difficulty as you go on eliminates the need for a tutorial. You start off smooth and things get harder. Great. Couple complaints. Mac hit the nail on the head. The controls needed some work. And the best way that I could describe it is World 6 of Mario 3 is an ice world where you're running and you're sliding. And I feel like that was happening the whole time throughout this game. I just felt like the gravity or the friction between the character and the world was just not as tight as it should have been. And I felt like as I'm platforming, I'm hitting the platform and I'm sliding off, not because I'm bad, but just because the physics in that aspect were not where they needed to be. I was playing on the Steam Deck. The other frustration I had is that this game had a lot of bugs. I encountered several crashes. Maybe Mac didn't. But there was even one time where I was mid-level, and they have these little save points, in a very difficult platforming level. And I paused the game, came back, unpaused it, and it just crashed. Like, stuff like that, I get that games have bugs, but as much polish as there was in other areas, it frustrated me. Also, I didn't think the voice acting was that great. I just was frustrated by it. So,
hey, I don't mind the voice acting. I feel like we're very much set up to expect perfection in a lot of ways. I didn't mind the voice acting, and I didn't mind the story so much. I just wish they could have implemented it in the game a bit more instead of bookending every single level. I wish that there had been a way for them to put the story more in the game, tell us story beats in the gameplay, rather than just relying on the cutscenes. I would love to have experienced it. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I have the answers as to what would have been the right way or the best way, but I just feel like those before and after cutscenes, if they had happened every third level or so, I feel like I would have been a bit more kind toward it. But,
I do got to point out like a couple really, really positive things about this.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot to pick from.
There is. It's a good game at its core, and the content that's there's a lot of it. So I'll be honest, I have not finished this game. I just finished Act 1, and I'm several hours in. And when I look at the achievements, it looks like 20% of people have finished Act 1. So I feel like a lot of people haven't finished this game. The other thing is that there's mods available for this game. If you go to the main menu, you can create your own levels. You can play other people's levels. I think that's great, and I think it adds some longevity. Mac, for the sake of time, we may want to move on. But before we do, I'd love to hear any last thoughts you have, particularly around if this is worth $19.99, and then your rating for the game.
It's so hard. I mean, I would say it might be worth $19.99, but I think it needs a little tweak to the like you were saying, the friction. I feel like the controls need a little bit of work. The physics need a little bit more work. My rating, I'm conflicted. I want to rate it higher, but I have to say 3 out of 5. There's nothing too wrong with the game aside from controls that I don't care much for and cutscenes that just got a little bit, that got a little bit too frequent. Tell me this story in the game, or at the very least get those controls under control, and we're talking 4 out of 5, but right middle of the road for me.
I was debating between 3 and 3.5, and I settled on a 3 because I do believe it is a good game. It's fine, right? As far as pricing goes, and this will be my last thing I say about this game, indie devs, and we play a lot of indies. We're blessed to be able to be given a lot of indies. Yes, it is $16.99 right now, someone said in the chat. Indie devs, when you're pricing your game, price it based on what it is worth to the player. Do not price it based on what it cost you to make. And what I mean by that is, if you have 10 voice actors and they all want a piece of the pie, and you have artists and you have programmers and level designers, that's great, but that doesn't mean that you can charge $20 for a game that should be $9.99 or $14.99. And I feel like that's what happened here. That's all I have to say.
Well, we wish everybody the best, and in no way is that more evident that when we're going to take you on a little tour of a Kickstarter project, something that's trying to get off the ground. We're going to talk about the virtues and the vices and say whether or not we think it should be kicked out of here or kick-started. I've put another link in the chat, so those of you who are here with us live can take a look, Mr. Nice Guy included, and I hope that this brings some joy to you, Mr. Nice Guy. This is the GC, standing for GameCube Ultimate Controller Kit. This is meant to be a DIY controller to bring the GameCube feel to Switch, PC, and other retro consoles. So, what are we talking about? we are talking about a GameCube style controller that happens to incorporate some of the newer advancements in gaming, and not just RGB lighting, no, but also replaceable components. I mean, it does have the RGB lighting as well. The Bluetooth, so that you can pair it to your Switch, to your PC, otherwise. Cables that allow you to plug it in on its wireless port that you would normally charge or data transfer, and plug that straight into a GameCube or use the Nintendo 64. You do have to do a little bit of button pressing to shift it between modes if you're going to use it with those other retro consoles. So basically, this has been in development for a little while, and they feel like they are finally ready to go from prototype stage to actually being ready to rock and roll. And while this is the first Kickstarter project that this particular gentleman has gone through, Mitch here is working and associated with the Handheld Legend crew, which, while I don't have that much, I've not bought anything from them. Handheld Legend has been around for a while selling various retro stuff, but I don't know too much about there. It seems, from what we can see, like this will be reasonable quality, perhaps even good quality. And of course, since GameCube controllers are really not being manufactured that much anymore, if this does turn out to be good quality, then we are talking about an option to keep the Smash alive. Out of a $212,000 goal to make this whole thing happen, they're at $173,000. And if you're interested in getting a complete kit for your ultimate GameCube controller, then you're looking at about $125. So, $275 if you want to say get two of them, but that does of course include those USB cables to GameCube / Nintendo 64 and the like. And of course, as with any Kickstarter project, more and more options as the price goes up and tax on. Now, disclaimer, I've not now, nor have I ever been involved in the Smash scene, so I cannot speak to the unique awesomeness of the GameCube controller, but I pitch it to you, Mr. Nice Guy. These are some of the things that I see here, but what do you see?
Yeah, I see something, man, I feel like... I don't want to be negative all episode, but I feel like I see something here that is not a good use of your money. To be candid, if you want to play with a GameCube controller on your Nintendo Switch, and I just Googled this, you can buy a Power A GameCube style wired controller for the Nintendo Switch from Best Buy for $27.99. And it says you can pick it up tomorrow. Now, will it be customized? No. Will it work with your PC? I don't believe so. But there are much, much, much cheaper alternatives. And I feel like this Kickstarter is trying to solve a problem that does not exist. In what scenario are you wanting to use a GameCube controller on your PC?
Oh, me?
Yeah, you or anyone. The only time I would want to use a GameCube, specifically a GameCube controller on my PC, or any time is if I'm playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, or some other legacy GameCube game on my GameCube, or I guess via emulation. And I feel like we've reached the point for many of us that we already have enough controllers to accomplish the things that we want to do. I don't see any need for this one.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, I certainly can't fault you for speaking your mind on this. Like I said, I know just a couple of things about GameCube controllers, and that is that they're not making them anymore. Although, I mean, we can get a third-party one. Granted, this would be third-party as well, but I feel like while there's never going to be a shortage of, Mad Catz isn't around anymore. But while there wasn't going to be a shortage of the Mad Catz controllers or of that ilk, it is hard to find a quality controller sometimes. And the more niche the need, such as something GameCube style, I feel like the more difficult it will be to find something good quality. It seems as though they've still got, what have they got? 28 days left to go, and they're already at 173, so they're nearly 85% of the way funded. I think that there are enough people who are enticed and interested by this. I was kind of hoping that it would be for you. Maybe, though. Maybe might be for your brother. Who knows? Maybe
yeah, he'd probably like it. He
Yeah.
loves Super Smash Brothers, and so do I. So for someone like him, I could see him wanting this.
Yeah, this Kickstarter's not about you and me, Mr. Nice Guy. This is about your brother, your poor brother, who needs more Smash in his life. And yeah, so I hope that there are people out there who are interested in this. There are some various other things that they've got going on, like you can change the joystick plates so that instead of being 8 directional, kind of like how those early analog joysticks had a kind of 8 directional movement style, you can just have it 360 degrees, kind of more how we're used to nowadays, and a few other things that you can shift out and change and move that may potentially wind up being better for gaming, even retro gaming. But anyway, as a lover of retro gaming, I kind of do love seeing things like this, even if I don't really get the appeal of the GameCube controller. I just don't.
So here's 2 things real quick, and I could almost guarantee that they have not thought of this. But that said, I have not read their whole Kickstarter. Because you can alter this controller to do 360-degree things and whatnot, is there a chance that someone who is buying this because they are a Super Smash Brothers enthusiast and continues to compete in tournaments is going to buy this controller only to find that it is banned later on in tournament because of those additional functions? I think that's a very real possibility. Kind of a rhetorical question because we don't know. The other thing that I'll say is I feel like the reason you can use it on your PC is not because people would actually want to do so, but simply because it's a feature that if it was not there would frustrate the buyer. So I have to, in some ways, give them credit for that. Adding Bluetooth or adding a dongle or whatever method they're using and making it accessible on PC, even though really I can't see a scenario where this is the controller you grab when you're doing something on your PC.
Well, I will say, Mr. Nice Guy, while I'm not the biggest fan of the GameCube controller, I would have to say I hope this succeeds, but it's a kick for me. I was hoping it might be a kickstart for you.
I actually thought you were going to say kickstart because I was so off-put by it. We always want people to succeed, but
we do.
But this is definitely a kick for me. And I'm actually going to be following this because I want to see what happens when someone brings this to a tournament and the organizers eventually say it's giving you an unfair advantage and it's banned in the future. And then people will feel like they wasted their money because at that point you don't even want to practice with it. You just want to practice with a controller that you're going to be able to use in tournament. So we'll see.
We will see. We wish you the best, but and we hope you find your crew, but it is not us. Good luck, Mitch. Good luck. And that's been Kick or Kickstart.
Nice. Well, now it is time for Nerd Flex.
Woo-hoo.
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, if you're here live, you have a job to do. Mac and I... Well, first of all, if you have a multiple-choice gaming-related question, put it in the chat. Mac and I will use nothing but our noggins to try to answer it. No Google, no cheating, no phoning a friend. We just use our gaming knowledge to answer your questions. We also have a test bank of questions that we pull from in weeks where y'all are feeling a little bit shy and don't necessarily want to ask a question. First off, we have a special round.
Ooh.
Here is the question, Mac. Name a song that references video games.
Well, there's that one from who's the one it's on like Donkey Kong.
Oh, I don't know what song that is, but that's definitely in a song at some point.
Yeah.
I got one, Big Papa by Biggie Smalls. He says Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Back when we were broke, I couldn't picture this.
Oh, you are going to carry me through this.
There's one right there.
Have you got more?
So I remember there's another one, and it's actually from a previous Nerdflex question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a song by Eminem. You don't get another chance. Life ain't a Nintendo game. I can't remember what song that is. I'm trying to think of others.
I will say Adventures of Dwayne and Brando do the Mario.
Nice.
Well, and I mean, Adventures of Dwayne and Brando is overwhelmingly all about video games, so it's kind of cheap. They've got, Castlevania. Oh gosh, now that the juices are flowing, there is a Starbomb, I think, did a song about Castlevania. Never fear, Simon Belmont is here.
That's a song?
Yeah, that's a song. I'll send it to you later. It's pretty funny.
Nice. There's also, Lupe Fiasco talked about Street Fighter in one of his songs, and it's off the Cool CD, the Cool album, and I can't remember the name of the song. Bottom line, we've named several songs, or a few at least. Let's see which ones are on the card. Hail to the Geek by Deaf Pedestrians.
Okay.
Video Games by Tenacious D.
Oh.
Castlevania by Starbomb. Dough Is What I Got by Lil Wayne.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if that's the one you were thinking of. And then a song by called Chun-Li by Nicki Minaj, which I've never heard.
Me neither.
But I'm going to go listen to all of these. Well, we have got several listed, so we'll count that one as a win. All right, next question. And as a reminder, those of y'all that are here live, I know you have questions you want to ask, so stop being shy. Okay, so here's a Final Fantasy question that has come up next.
Ooh.
Who said it? Quote, "That's Shadow. He'd slit his mama's throat for a nickel." That's the quote. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't play Final Fantasy much.
So this is from Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 6, if you were anywhere outside of the US. In that one, Locke is the main character, and I feel like Locke is probably the one who said it, but it could have been Sabin Edgar, and it's tough for me to know who's... or it could have been Mog, like the narrator is Mog, and he'd pop up and describe things. I think it's Mog. I'm gonna go with Mog, but Mr. Nice Guy, we should hedge our bets, and I think you should guess one of those other names.
Let's go with Sabin.
Okay, and I'll go with Mog.
Final answer. It was actually Edgar.
Edgar! Oh, dang it! I knew Edgar was in the mix. You spoony bard.
You talked your way through it, and, you were very, very close. Here's a Sega question.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, Busta Ride-On does have a question for us.
Let's do it. Go for it, Mac.
Busta asks, what is the highest grossing arcade of all time? Is it A, Space Invaders, B, Street Fighter 2, C, Pac-Man, or D, King of Fighters? All solid games. I feel like King of Fighters is the slowest runner in that crew. I feel like we can eliminate D.
I feel like we could also eliminate Street Fighter, too.
I think you're right as well. I think this is a dead heat between Space Invaders and Pac-Man. We do have to reach an accord. Mr. Nice Guy, I can't choose.
I feel like Space Invaders probably came out first.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Pac-Man has much more long-lasting love.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, it's tough. I would go with Pac-Man.
Let's do it. Pac-Man, C, final answer. Busta Ride-On, let us know. C,
nice,
Pac-Man is correct. Mr. Nice Guy, you've just carried me this whole game. Thank you, my good man.
You're welcome, and that has been Nerdflex.
All right, well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
Now, Mr. Nice Guy, I had originally planned to talk about a little bit of an older, legalese thing. But I'd like to make a last-minute sort of swap around and give an update on some stuff that has featured in legalese lately.
Yeah.
And that is our good friend, or our acquaintance. We would love to call him a friend someday. Ross Scott, who's doing the Stop Killing Games effort. Those of you, of course, who know, the Stop Killing Games thing took several steps, including but not limited to starting by sending out all these petitions to governments in Australia, the UK, Canada. But specifically, the petitions weren't so much, hey, change something, as it was, hey, we have a question. The question is, can video game developers just kill games? And overwhelmingly, the answer to all those petitions, the response was, maybe? There's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball, was kind of the overwhelming thing. It's just like the law doesn't really address whether or not a video game manufacturer can destroy your video game after you've played it. And yeah, we don't know exactly what to do with it, which led to step 2, which is let's do something about it. And in some cases that was lawsuits. In other cases, like Australia, there's a movement to actually have the Australian consumer protection agencies and have consumer protection agencies worldwide weigh in on this and try to make moves to change things. And then, of course, the phase 3 that we're currently in, that people who happen to be in the EU can contribute to, and that is signing the petition. And that is a citizens' initiative that if it hits that 1 million signatures, it has a full year to get there. It's at 350,000 so far, and it's only been about a month or two. So it's still got some time. But as a response to this, Ubisoft has made a statement, which of course is interesting because Ubisoft's removal of the crew that had a fully functional single-player offline mode. It was never enabled in the first place, but it was always there in the code, as we would find out after it was shut off. But they shut that game down, and they did it, and they put out their Crew 2 video game. Bigger, faster, stronger than it was before. Well, this statement that Ubisoft has said says, quote, "We heard your concerns about access to the Crew games, and today we want to express our commitment to the future of the Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest, 2 games in the franchise. We can confirm an offline mode to ensure long-term access to both titles. Stay tuned for more news in the next month." End quote. Now, this, of course, does not address the offline mode that we know exists in the Crew 1, but it does seem to indicate that Ubisoft might be starting to get a little bit scared at the type of momentum that people have surrounding still being able to play their games and addressing it in the future of one of the more notable franchises that is involved. So while it isn't, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an EU lawyer, and I'm certainly not a PR person, but this seems like some positive movement from so far. All that we have is the 35% of what we need, and yet we have some... We'll see if it's worth the paper it's printed on, but some promises from Ubisoft about them doing better in these games moving forward. So perhaps it's positive movement, but it's something.
I saw a meme today, I gotta tell you, and it had Ubisoft on one side and it had Valve on the other. And it said, on the left, the Ubisoft side, it said, people should lose the expectation that they're able to own their games. Mm-hmm. And on the Steam side, the Valve side, it said, hey, we've just opened family and friend sharing so that you can now play each other's game. Mm-hmm. Like completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And I don't necessarily expect every company to do that, but there's got to be more middle ground than what Ubisoft is doing.
Indeed. And just one parting bit, as Galvatron points out, Ubisoft stock has been tanking. And they really want to try and reverse that. So trying to get goodwill with customers by making some promises might indeed be a way.
Bring back Splinter Cell.
Yes, but that has been legalese.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to episode 318 of Two Nerds in a Pod. Before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, and I'm not even going to explain it because you know what it is. You've done this 317 times with us before. Mac, what you've been watching and playing, and chat, let us know what you're into this week.
I've almost completed Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, a puzzle game that has a very interesting vibe to it. Now, with the puzzle game, you always wonder, will this have replayability? And I think it will, particularly because of the very slow drip in which you are fed the storyline.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of the puzzles, while the way that you solve the puzzle is always the same, a lot of the puzzles happen to be randomized. I can report that it is fun and enjoyable, and I'm probably going to play it again so that I can experience the story in a bit more of a, I won't be quite as focused on the puzzle solving process, so I'll be able to just be like, okay, what's the story? So that should be enjoyable. As for watching, a little bit of Taskmaster. It's a British game series. I've talked about it before, and I enjoy it. There's a new series that's dropping, and I'm looking forward to experiencing that. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
So much. Just kidding. I actually haven't had a ton of time. But obviously, I put a lot of time into Kitsune Tales in preparation for the review today. But also been playing VR. I hooked my Valve Index back up and did hop up into some big screen. And it's funny, you haven't played it for a while, so you hop in, and all your games need to be updated. So my desire back to get more into laser tag has actually made me remember, oh yeah, I can kind of do laser tag through my VR headset. Let me get back up in Pavlov. So that's been a thing. As far as watching the Marvel movies with my son and my wife. We're just through Thor in the Marvel timeline. And next is the Avengers, which we already watched. So I think next after that is going to be Thor 2. And we've been enjoying that. Watching The Great Barbecue Cook-Off, I think it's called, on Netflix. One more episode to go. And lots of YouTube. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out and being a part of the show. It was great to have you here for episode 318. Remember that if you're listening to this after the fact, you guys are awesome for listening. And you're also awesome for watching and being here with us. And if you want to be here with us live, stump us with those trivia questions or just give us your opinions as we're chatting back and forth. You've heard their voices as we've repeated them. You could be one of them. Twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Pacific. Most every Tuesday. Come be a part of the fun. We'd welcome you. But until we see you next week, remember to be excellent to each other. Remember to support your indie game developers.
That's right.
And keep it nerdy, y'all.
Deuces. Games are art. See ya.
Bye.